Thank you. Then we can start. Have you read the resources that we have shared with you? There we had a basic guide to essay planning. So if any of you have any questions to start about this, we can start with questions. Or would you prefer for us to review together this guide? Please comment.
I could ask a question if I'm able to. Just I was interested to find out, and it doesn't matter what the answer is because everybody has a different way of planning their assignment, but has anybody started to write down any notes or a kind of framework of how you might answer the assignment based on these questions? Almost like not writing in full sentences, but just putting bullet points down of things you might like to say in each section, or some of the main questions. Just an open question to anyone, if anyone works that way and has started to write out a structure of what you would like to include. And it's fine if you haven't, and it was more to say that sometimes it's helpful to share that with someone. You know, you might want to share it with a fellow student or with a tutor, and everyone, you know, it's just good to talk it over with someone, I think.
Please remember that this session is for you to share and to learn, and this is not something you are going to be evaluated. We are not going to judge you if you have started or you have not had the opportunity to start preparing your assignment. But I think this is the greatest opportunity to learn how to prepare for it.
Can I just say one thing, Valeria? It's Anna here. I've been the module leader for about 10 years now, and one of the things that we find with students who are they work really hard and they are really keen to succeed, and it is frustrating for them and also for us as tutors. I think if they maybe when they read the question, I think sometimes it's easy for us all to think we know what the question is asking. And I think, like we're saying, spend some time really reading that question. And like you say, get a highlighter, get a pen, put your, right underneath all of those important words. This is not a waste of time. So I think I was speaking to a student on Saturday, and it's great because he's working really hard. He's got loads of ideas, and we were laughing and joking, saying, just slow right down, and take your time just to think, what is the question that is being asked? Because we've all done it. I've done it as well, definitely. You think, oh, I know what they're asking, and actually it's not the question that you want. It's the question that's there that you need to read. So sorry if that's a very simple point, but I think we've seen it lots of times. People do it too quickly and they guess what the question is, but actually you need to be quite slow and careful.
Thank you, and I think that is the most important part. I think this is the most important part.
I would like to
Yes, Nicholas, please. Continue with your
I would like to Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, I would like to ask a question about the images. There is a question that requires us to put some images in the questions. I would just like to ask, where can we find these images, or is it right to other email? Let's say journals, articles. Would it be right to use them and perhaps cite them and include them in this?
No, yo estoy grabando. Sí.
As part of the assignment, as required.
Nicholas, I wondered, so that we can properly make sure we understood you, and just if it would be helpful if you could write something in the chat, because I can tell you what I heard, but I think I missed some key things. You were asking about whether you've been asked in the question to include images, and you were asking then, I missed a few something, but it was about whether you have to reference the source of the image. Is that the question?
Yes, that's the question.
So it's specifically about how you reference the image. Is that the, yeah?
Yes, and also but also the sources.
Okay.
We can use.
Okay, so that,
because you know, yeah, it has to do with data.
Okay.
Brilliant. Okay, and so that's really good thinking. I like that you're thinking this already. That's brilliant master's level thinking, because you're thinking, I'm presenting something, but I need to show my reader what the original source is. It's not your, if it was your own image, you would reference it as a personal data that you have collected in, but because it's you know, from a different source, you need to acknowledge that, and so that the reader can judge the quality of that reference. So I think when you said image, I initially was thinking of a photo, but I understand. I think you mean you know, maybe a graph or a, you know, a data image. And I think
yes, that's,
yeah, and so it's important that you reference where you found that original data source from. So that's what you, if you've taken that data, and now I can't off the top of my head think of the data source, but you know, from the UN data source, or then you should reference where you found that exact source from. So is there something, can you tell us a bit more about what assignment you're doing, and what data it is you're looking for?
okay. I'm looking at this is a question about HIV in Kenya, and you know, you want to present, or you want to compare data from let's say Kenya, or the incidence rates, or the, we are talking about the prevalence rates. So, and also you have to, let's say I want to demonstrate the trends. So my question was, would it be, it's like the way you've told us, but would it be okay to manipulate, let's say, a data source, or when maybe you want to present something that
Okay, so that's I think what you're saying is that the raw data you are finding, you would like to manipulate that yourself and to make it into a figure, you know, to look at producing a graph to show the trends, or is that what you're saying? You're not taking the analysis, you're taking the raw data and you want to use that to look at trends and incidents, is that right? Yeah, and
Yeah, that's what I mean.
yeah, and I think I mean it'd be good to also hear from Anna, but you know, I think that would be really good work. You know, if you reference the source of the data, so and think about maybe also the quality of that data and why you might be thinking what might affect the quality of the data. So can you be certain about its completeness and its accuracy and its timeliness? And so you're not just saying, oh, I've got this data from here, this is where it's from, but actually these are some of the maybe the limitations of this data. It might not be complete or it might not be accurate. You know, this could have affected it. So you're starting to say, I've got this data, I know, you know, I'm fairly confident in it, or actually I'm not so confident in it, and this is the reason why. And then you could say that you've presented the you know, you have done the visual representation of it, but the data source is still collected from a different you know, it's a different data set. I don't know, Anna, if you wanted to come in to add anything to that.
Well, yeah, I would agree with that. I think the biggest problems that we see with students presenting charts or graphs, presenting data, is that they use them, which is great, but then they don't give a title or a reference or some explanation. So the guide to referencing in the library of study skill resources in the Students' Corner is really good. And actually that says the same thing, that when in doubt, always reference. So always say where this is from. And like Deb says, say what you think some of the problems might be with the data, the strengths, the weaknesses. So I guess what we're saying is, yes, please use data and images is a really good way. It's also good for your word count, Nicholas, so you don't use up too many words. You can often present something in a much more efficient way than you would do with writing lots of words. And if you're showing, for the communicable disease module, obviously we're often looking at trends over time, and it's much better to show that on a graph. So that's really good. But make sure you have a title for your graph that says image showing time trend of whatever it is, and then really explain what it shows and show where say where you got the data from. But no, that sounds good, Nicholas. Is that okay? Great.
Thank you for answering. So we have a question on the thread that is from Daniel. He's asking that when using material from a source and with the emphasis on avoiding plagiarism and using your words, one might present things in a way that looks quite different from the source and what it presents. And do you think we should stick some part of the material? I think that the answer to this question is also referencing properly, but I would like to hear your thoughts. And Debs and Neil.
Yeah, I think, again, it's always better to say where the information came from, even if it's looking different, because what you're showing is that what I always try to explain to the students is, if I was reading the assignment and I thought, oh, that's interesting. I don't know much about that. I'd like to find out more. If I have a reference, then I can go and find out more. But if I don't, then I'm thinking, well, where did this come from? So if you're presenting somebody else's information or opinion, you must put a reference in. Would you agree, Debs?
Oh, definitely, definitely. And I think also the nuance of what you were asking, Daniel, is about to avoid plagiarism. Even if you reference something, you need to reword it. You know, so for instance, if you read something and you thought, oh, this is a really good study, I need to include this. Let me just take this paragraph and include it, and I will write the reference at the end. If there are some circumstances when you know, one or two sentences, it is appropriate to put direct quotations, and there is no better way of writing it, and you can include direct quotations and references. You just have to do that properly. You have to put the quotation marks, and you should say what page it's on. There's guidance of how to do that. But the important thing is showing the reader that you didn't write that, someone else wrote it, so you put it in quotations. And there are some circumstances when that is just the, you know, this, I'm trying to think of how to explain it, but, you know, maybe a small percentage of your essay, that is okay. But when it is a large proportion of your essay, it isn't showing us that you can understand it yourself and tell us it back in your own words. So I sometimes think of it, before you start writing, imagine you met somebody that you know from work, or met somebody that is another colleague or a friend, and you wanted to tell them about this paper. You've read something and you only have, you know, maybe a quick time with them on the walk to work, and you say, oh, really, I've read this really interesting paper. It tells you this, this, this. And you tell it to them in the way that is your words. And you're just saying the key things that, you know, it found. And you're using your language. That's fine. That's the way that you would talk and communicate. That is much better for you to help you understand. When you're thinking it and you're rewriting it in your own words, then your brain remembers it much better than just writing it in the way that the original article was written. Maybe not related to your country, maybe not related to. So for your learning, it's much better to actually read it and then think, what does this actually mean? Let me try and think how I would tell a colleague. And then if I'm going to write that down, what are the key points? And I'm going to write it in my own words. And you'll learn a lot more that way than just copying the sentence word for word. But I think, Daniel, you were meaning, is there a concern that if you write it in your own words, the meaning will be lost? And I think that's why you put the reference in, so that the person, if they want to read more detail, they can go. Because sometimes there is misinterpretation of but you know, that's why we reference. So you were saying exactly, because you were saying that maybe you would have misinterpreted. You would have read an article and you thought it said one thing, when actually it was slightly different. But that's the whole reason. That's the joy of I suppose, sharing papers, and that's how we all learn together. So I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's a good thing.
Thank you very much, Debs. We have Salma, who has raised her hand, I believe.
Yeah, hi everyone. It's nice to hear your voices. It's Salma Abdel Fattah from Egypt. I would like to share with you the way I approach any assignment. I don't do bullet points. Honestly, my approach is that I go through resources, important resources, and brainstorm. And once I feel that I have done enough research, I go and do the bullet points. But at the beginning, I have to brainstorm, because in most of the assignments, the questions are linked together. Normally, we discuss a certain disease, for example, incommunicable diseases. So I go and really do a good search on that disease, and then I start the assignment, and the tutors can correct me if I'm wrong, of course. Thank you. Over.
Thanks, Selma, and nice to hear your voice from last time. I think everybody has their own way of doing it, and we definitely don't want to tell you that there is only one way to prepare. For some things, I like to get one big piece of paper and draw lots of connecting lines and just important words, and that helps me to make sure that I don't miss anything out. But we all think in different ways, and I think all we need to do is make sure that you can find the way that works for you. So I would agree, Salma. I think that I like your description of the sort of brainstorming and reading really widely, and that's great. But it might not work for other people. So I think if that works for you, then that's fine. And I think sometimes every time we do a big piece of work like this, we change a bit. We think, okay, next time I'm going to do more reading at the beginning or do more reading later. It's fine. There's no one way. But I think really what we're trying to say here is take your time planning and preparing, and don't rush into writing too much too quickly. That's all.
Great. We have a question in the chat. One person is asking about how to trim down words when we are trying to reach the word limit, and how to effectively manage that.
I think that would be a good question to open out and see if other people have got suggestions to ask your peers and to ask different approaches. But personally, for me, I think I try and maybe, if you can, with time, take a few days away from not reading it, or take some time to have a break and then come back reading it afresh. And then when you're reading it, you're trying to look at each section and each paragraph within the section and think, what are the key points I'm making? And then you can almost see if sometimes maybe you're repeating yourself, or, you know, maybe you can doing the reverse. If you've already got the text written, you change it into bullet points. And you say, this paragraph tells me this paragraph tells me this, and then you're thinking, oh, hang on, I've got too much about this. I've got 4 paragraphs about just this one bullet point. Maybe I can reduce it to 3 or 2. So I don't think there's one way. But you know, taking time out and reading it with a different set of eyes, or asking somebody else to read it as well, can help. Does anybody else have a different way? Because there is no one right way as well.
Just one really quick thing to add that might be useful, and I'm sure you're doing this anyway, but look again at the marking guide, see where the marks are. See there is no point writing lots if there aren't that many marks. So use that as your guide. And we've tried in the communicable disease module to make it really clear where we want lots of detail and where we don't need so much. So use that as your guide. But yes, like Deb says, make sure you don't repeat yourself. I think it's easy isn't it? If you've done some reading and you find something really interesting and really important and you want to keep saying it, and you've got to make sure that you're efficient with your writing. But it's a good question.
Good evening. May I have just one question?
Sure.
Yeah, my question is regarding the for instance, on this the first question regarding the HIV burden, there is some description in the questions. However, it is not clear in the bullet number. So I'm somehow confused with the bullet number explanation with some details in the question. If I can detail my question, for instance, in the question they say identify any bias or problem with routinely available data on HIV in our country. However, in the bullet number there is no such statement. So somehow we are confused. So we are asking if we will describe only the bullet number phrases or the. So I'm somehow confused.
I was going to ask a question back, and sorry, I didn't catch your name. What's your name?
My name is Jean-Claude.
Jean-Claude, okay. Good question, thanks for asking. And I was going to ask you back if you had had a discussion at all with any of the tutors from the module or the module leader to ask that question. Or is this the first time you're asking it now?
No, it is my first time asking this question.
Okay, brilliant. And so hopefully we can give you some ideas for thinking, but also I think it would be really valuable also to ask, even on the, if you're comfortable, in the kind of public forum on Moodle, because other students who aren't here tonight might also be thinking the same, and then they were thinking, oh, I'm glad that he's asked that, Jean-Claude's asked that question, because I was wondering that too. So that's always good to, you know, there's no harm in asking questions at any time of the tutors. We like that, you know, we like it when students contact us in advance and ask us, you know, what does this mean? And so in terms of the detail, I think, you know, if it says it in the main question, it seems like that and there's points allocated to that, that's a given that you should include that. And so I wonder within the bullet points, if it's worded in a different way, you know, that is a similar thing, but maybe just worded differently. I don't know what else is in the bullet points, so it's hard to, but equally, this is really helpful feedback for all of us as tutors, because next year we can make the changes and make it clearer that the wording is the same, or, you know, so I just urge you please to feedback to the tutors and to so that they can clarify for you.
Thank you so much for the information.
We have a question in the chat box. It's for a person from Sierra Leone. She's or he's saying that they struggle with getting data for most topics, and then they end up using data from other countries and making comparison. I think that can be an issue for some countries that don't have many data. Do you have any suggestions?
Shall I come in first, Anna? Do you want, or does anybody else have any suggestions, actually? Just to open it out, maybe other people saw that question and they have some ideas of what they have been doing, because we all face the same challenges, I'm sure. And don't worry, there's no right or wrong, you know, it's an open space to just discuss. Has anybody else been sharing the same thoughts and they're not sure how to manage it. It's hard because the cameras are off, so I can't see if anyone's
I can
nodding.
share my thoughts on the
We
would
can
like
hear
to
you,
share my
Nicola.
thoughts on the where to find the data. We have these online repositories, which let's say UN/AIDS, WHO, which have repositories where you can find specific data, maybe for your country or for the topic you're interested in.
Thank you, Nicola. Thank you. And so I understand that that's a good first point, isn't it, to see what data is available on the, the kind of international web sources, and what is available maybe through your own country database, and maybe unpublished data that is collected in your place of work, that kind of thing. But I think the question was also about using data from another country and comparing it to so either the findings from a study which wasn't in Sierra Leone, but it is of a relevant topic, and you think, how does this apply to Sierra Leone? And I think showing in the assignment, it's thinking through those questions that you need to do out loud. You need to show us in the assignment that you have asked those questions. So, for instance, there could be, a study, a really good study that you found, but it's in the Gambia or something, and you say, well, I found this really interesting research and it shows that this is really effective, but actually I think we can't be sure that this would be the same in Sierra Leone, because in the Gambia, or in the study, they looked at predominantly rural people living rurally, and the area I'm talking in Sierra Leone is mainly urban. Or maybe it was a different age of population, or maybe the cultural practices are so different in the Gambia and Sierra Leone that you say, well, yes, this is an interesting study and it may apply to Sierra Leone, but I don't have enough information to say, to make that inference, to make the logic, the jump between, what that's telling me in the Gambia and if it would be the same in Sierra Leone. So you can just say, you're thinking out loud what those questions are and whether you know the answers to them or not. Or it could be that there's a study even in your own country. Suppose you found a study from Sierra Leone, but it's in the same country, but actually it's not a very good study, or it's from a different population group. So even if it's the same country, it might be, you might not be able to compare it, or it might be. So the point is it's more important that you are thinking about what is it from that research that is related to the question you're trying to answer. And do you know the answers, or is it still that it leaves you with open questions and you have to just say that? You say you don't know because there wasn't enough information in the study. It didn't tell you, the age of the participants, or it didn't tell you, blah, blah, blah. So I don't know if I've waffled a bit too much on that. Anna, did you want to add another example?
No, I think it's just being practical, isn't it? And I think it's just showing that you're thinking, and that's a good thing. And as with all the talking about critical thinking, showing that you can look at this and not just say, oh yeah, this is exactly the same, this will be fine. You're thinking, okay, there are some strong bits and some weak bits to this, and some things that are useful. So no, I'd agree. Yeah.
Neil, you're muted. We can hear you.
Sorry about that. Yeah, that was just the point I was going to make. At the master's level, we're looking for that level of critical analysis. So this is actually an opportunity to demonstrate you're thinking critically about the data. So the lack of data in itself may not be the issue. It's the fact you're thinking critically about the issues around the lack of data. So yeah, I agree with what's been said with so far on that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Maria, sorry, can I just say one thing quickly?
Sure.
I'm sure people on this call all know how to find the study skills resources, but I just want to make sure everyone knows where they are. Can I share my screen just to show what I'm
Sure.
talking about?
Please
Is
do.
this okay? Because I think there is so much good stuff there that it's really worth being able to see that. This is where I can't find. Here it is. Yeah. Because it's really just to say there's fantastic things here about how to write critically, what we mean by that. There's also things like there's a really good video here, if you can see my pointer, which is a really nice video to help you structure your essay. And then all of the things that we've been talking about with referencing and plagiarism, before you start, I would really recommend just doing this quiz on referencing and just check that you understand first. So it's just to remind you that this is all on the website and it's in Students' Corner. Okay, so everyone has access to this. So please use what's there as well as your module leaders and tutors as well. But I'd really recommend doing that.
Thank you. And the link has also been shared on the post that everyone has received for this meeting. Well, I think Salma has a question.
It's not a question, but I was just sharing my experience when it comes to resources and limited resources in some countries. Sometimes I look at regional studies that covers the whole region where the country is. I don't know if it's right or wrong. Of course, everybody can correct me if I'm wrong, but you can always look at your region also and take something from it. Thank you. Over.
Thanks, Salma. That's a really good thought. That you know, I think it's about first asking the question, you know, what data is there, and if there isn't any data, that's an important thing to say. Sometimes you think you're not saying anything, but that's a finding in itself, the same as what Neil just said, and then explore why there might not be any data, and you know, specifically in the region you work in or in the country, or and then it's about saying, okay, there isn't the exact data I would like, but there is this other data here, and and this is what it's telling me, and this is why I think it's relevant, but also this is why I think it isn't relevant, you know. So you're being critical about actually how it's helping you understand this a bit more, but you know, there's still some gaps in your understanding, or there's still some things you're thinking, not sure that would be exactly the same. So, you know, it depends how big the region is. It's more important that you, when you talk about it, you say, this is what the regional data is telling us, and it might relate to my country because, or, you know, it might be relevant to the question I'm trying to ask, because it's a similar, you know, there's a similar population demographic, there's a similar rate of communicable disease, there's a similar health system infrastructure, you know, in the region. So it's more just that you're talking about why it's relevant.
Thank you, Debs. Does anyone else have a
Yes.
question?
Yes, this is Sulaiman Mansari from, I'm speaking from Sierra Leone. So I was the one who sent in the question about the data availability. So I also experienced another thing. So I started writing my assignment on the public health concept for policy makers. I started with abortion. So when I got to the second question, I saw there for me to describe the measure of the disease. So I've started with abortion, and now I'm seeing disease. So I had to go back and change my topic. So I've decided to now work on malaria. So I don't know if it was right for me to have started with abortion and now seeing a disease. So that's my point.
Bro, thank you. And I think that's a really useful learning, reflection, to think that, like we said back at the beginning, when we're planning, it's really easy to jump in and write the first question, the first question first, and then move on to the second. And it's worth, if we can in the future, to try and look at the whole assignment before you write the first bit. But I know it's, I've done it as well. We're enthusiastic and we're passionate about learning, and so that's good as well. And I think, definitely it would be good to, I'm open to have the discussion with you as the module leader, in more detail, and again, we can have it in the wider forum with the other students as well. But I would say that you wouldn't, if you want to, if you feel malaria is better for you, and that's an area of interest, then that's fine. But also if you wanted to look at reproductive health and something more closely linked to abortion, but maybe broadening it out a bit, then that's also possible. So we could explore, how could you look at this? What are you hoping to get out of the assignment? And which of the topics is the right one that you're interested in, and that kind of would enable you to answer the assignment.
Okay, thank you very much, Deborah. I'll get back to you. I'll do that. I'll follow up.
Okay,
thank you.
Yeah, do that, and let's the same for all of the students. I'm sure the conversations with the tutors, it's that dialogue where it's a useful learning process.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks. We have a raised hand. Yes, please go on.
Yeah, this is Clara from Zambia. There's been a good session, and I'm learning a lot. I just want to bring in a question on the issue of the introduction. In some cases, we are required to, as we're starting to answer, to write up an essay, you do an introduction, probably also a background. So at times, I get mixed up with the background and the introduction. So really, how do I just manage to differentiate that this is a background, this is an introduction? They seem like at some point, like it is almost the same thing. Thank you.
I'm happy to take that if you like. Clara, I think that's an excellent question. And like with a lot of things, there is not a black and white answer to this. I think that most people marking would not be too strict about the name. I think it's more important that you just give that introduction and you give the background. And I think most people, obviously I don't know the module assignment that you're looking at. And so, yes, follow the instructions, of course. But I agree with you. What you don't want to do is repeat yourself too much and say the same things in the introduction and the background. So maybe just write what you think you need for both, and then see where you can cut it down is one way of doing it. Introduction, I guess, is really setting the scene. I always say to the students, this is you saying, this is why I've chosen it, this is why it's important, and this is what I'm going to write about. Because you could say, well, I've already said that in the title. Well, no, the introduction is saying, here is what I'm writing about, and this is why. I would then say that the background for me is a bit more about setting the scene of, this is the situation that we're talking about. This is the setting, whether you've chosen your city, your country, your region, and this is the issue that we have in terms of the economy or the social determinants of health or anything like that. So I think there's a little bit of difference like that, but I think that as long as you have that information in, I wouldn't get too stressed about exactly what the title is between the two, if that makes sense. As long as it's there. I think bigger problem that I've seen is people just getting straight into the disease and talking about the infection. And actually we want you to think in a public health way and show that you think about the whole population. Okay. Whether you're a doctor, a nurse, midwife or anything, you can see that public health is not just about the patient in front of you. It's about, where do people live? What's the economy like? Do people have jobs? You know, all of those sorts of things that are useful to set the scene.
Yeah.
I hope that's helpful, Clara.
Yeah, it is. It is
Good
really
question. Yeah.
Mm.
And I think, you know, if you read, I think the other thing with a lot of this that can help is just reading papers and different articles. People have different styles. You will like some more than others and some you won't like, you know, that's normal. But I think just, it's like practice, isn't it? The more you read, you start to get a feel for, okay, this bit goes here, this is introduction, this is background, this is conclusion. So it's about having a sort of shape. And I think, thinking back to what Deb said, okay, we're trying to get you to write in an academic way, but also think about if you were sitting down with people that you worked with and said, okay, this is the paper. It starts off by saying that this is the problem, and then it talks about this. So lead us through it. Take us through it.
Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you.
That's helpful.
We have a question in the chat as well. It's about data. When there are few students and the data is not public domain and they are behind a paywall, how can we explore this data? Do you have any suggestions?
I was just going to say that I think it's important to show that you have searched but not found, you know, so you can say that there is very little published or there is no data in the public domain available for this. It's worth writing that as a sentence to show that, you know, there really isn't the data there. And you could say, you know, that there is access to this data, and I've seen the summary paragraph, however, so I'm not able to critique it, you know. So, and the summary of if the summary paragraph is available tells me this, but I am wary of, you know, referencing, I'm wary of, or I'm unable to really look at the detail of the study, so I can't say whether it's relevant to my population, and I can't, you know, look at the quality of the research. So that's one thing you could do. I don't know, again, if others have any thoughts.
No, again, I would just say double check in the guidance that's on the website as well about all the sources of free online literature, because there is a lot. And even things like WHO bulletins, I've honestly in the past found those really helpful. So we don't want you paying lots of money to access information. We really don't. because some of these papers are really expensive. So that should not happen. So have a look in the Students' Corner in the study skills, because there is a really good guide to what you can access for free as well.
Thank you, everyone. We are over the hour. I think we have time for one more question, if anyone has. Okay. If there are no more questions, I would like to close this session. Do Anna, Neil, and Debs want to say something before closing?
Oh, look, I'll just say briefly because I haven't said much, but I think Anna made the point in passing about the marking guide. I think it's a really good tool to give some direction as to where to put your effort in, where to concentrate on, because that a lot of thought's gone into that. So I would say that's a good tool that can be used.
Yeah, I agree, Neil. And often we change the marking guide over the years to make it more helpful. And sometimes it's worth keep looking at the marking guide. Don't just look at it at the beginning. Look at it halfway through. Look at it at the end. Keep looking at it, because it's easy to miss things.
Yeah.
But no, thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, I would just echo that. Thanks for coming, because I think it shows real dedication. It's good to ask questions, you know, so it's great that you've given up your time to come and, you know, be inquisitive about how you can improve your essay. But don't be afraid. If you've got another question that comes later in the evening or in the morning, then don't be afraid to ask. It only shows a sign of strength when you're asking a question.
And there will always be lots of other people with the same question, always, always. Thank you,
everyone. Thank you very much to our tutors.
Thanks, Valerie.
Okay, thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
And please continue with your questions in the forum.
Thank you.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you very much, and goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, bye.
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 Thank you.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.